Okay, welcome everybody to the Regional Council meeting for March the 24th. I want to acknowledge that this meeting is being held in the traditional territories of our friends and neighbors and partners to the Treaty 8, the Fort Nelson First Nation, as well as the Prophet River First Nation. I want to recognize that we have a common treaty. We recognize the rights within that common treaty. We recognize the enduring presence and contributions made by the Métis people who have lived in this region for a long time. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually, is being streamed and recorded. Council, do you have any additions to tonight's agenda? No? Staff, any additions? Okay, there is one, 9.3 has been pulled from the meeting. There's no need to move forward with the repeal and replacement of resolution number 48. Just so you know.
That was the first time I seen one. I was excited for it.
Gotta get a life, my friend. Okay, there is a public comment period. Now, this is an opportunity during the meeting where the public gets an opportunity to speak to any particular agenda item that that's on tonight's agenda, and they're free to speak. Come on up to the table, please. Please say your name and your address. And you have 3 minutes.
It won't take 3 minutes. This is Todd Penny, 44 Raven Crescent. I'm just here for item number 6. If you do have any follow-up questions or anything you have about the Tourism Event Society, so I'll just be in the gallery in case you want anything. That's all I'm letting you know now.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening. Have a seat. Yep. Oh, your name and address and the item on the agenda that you'd like to speak to, please.
Bill Dolan, I'm here this evening on behalf of the school district. Still need the address and stuff.
Agenda item that you're.
Agenda item is the CMA
Okay.
issue.
Yep.
Briefly, in the last couple of months since New Year's alone, 3 of us trustees have gone out on Central Mountain. All 3 have had delays. Mine was the most recent. I was 6 days away for a 2 days worth of meetings. So the schedule is, it's limited and it's inconvenient. There's a misconnect between Central Mountain and WestJet that you're within an hour. If they could coordinate, I could have been in Vancouver in the evening. Instead, I got there at 9 o'clock, whenever it was. Way back was worse. It's our tax dollars. My meetings were done late in the afternoon on Friday. Spent a day in Vancouver. The next day, I got up to Prince George, had to overnight. The next morning, my flight was delayed, spent half the day in the airport. Then it was canceled, flew to Vancouver on a different airline, flew back up to Fort St. John, got there about midnight to a hotel. Fortunately, local contacts was able to put out the word and managed to find somebody that needed a vehicle brought home. So I was able to drive home. Day later than I should have been, but a day later than I could have been. So I could have been away had I not made my own arrangements. 7 days for a 2-day trip. Tax dollars expensive, and you know, I'm not fully employed. If I had young kids and a job I had to show up to, that would have been a significant drain. So anyway, I'm grateful to have air travel. But since the deregulation, it has gone down and down and down. We have been continually sloughed off onto smaller and smaller airplanes. I know tight margins, but it's really a poor situation. So, and for the school district, it's very costly. It's hard to recruit staff members. It's hard to keep our staff happy, and it's extremely expensive. Like when I have to be away a week for 2 days worth of meetings. So, anyway, if this adds any sort of weight to whatever anybody can do, we would appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anybody else? Is there anybody online? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. Good like 3 minutes.
They've done. Okay, my name's Mark Cripps. I'm here for myself and for a few of the other seniors who are finding problems with CMA. And the problems are, a lot of us have medical problems, and we're going down basically for cancer and heart. And we're going to Vancouver, all going to Prince George. The problem is CMA is canceling flights. No notice, they just don't come in. You go down there and they just don't tell you a reason. And that's been getting worse and worse. The CMA owner deliberately makes sure that you cannot interface with WestJet or Air Canada. So you cannot get where you need to go in a efficient and proper way. We're spending days on the way, exactly as Bill said. And it's costing a lot of money. So there's a fair amount of money that was given by the provincial government to charitable organization that arranges flights for people that need assistance in getting places medically. The problem with that is it's wasting their money. It's wasting hotel time. It's wasting. You book a flight, it's canceled. No reason. They maybe get their money back, they maybe don't. Charitable organization. Just depends upon how they're feeling. Anyway, it's becoming harder and harder to live here and achieve health with medical. And someone has to have a little chatter with the gentleman involved. I understand that he got a contract for parcel delivery. Now he doesn't have enough pilots. So they moved the pilots off our flights to the mail flights. That's just a comment that was made to me. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have. What it is unfortunately, Port Nelson is not providing the medical service anymore. And it is a real problem because you've got a lot of seniors here now. So it looks like somebody has to start talking to the provincial government and saying, you're going to have to help some of these people. Anyway, thank you very much.
Perfect timing, Mark. Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anybody else? Please.
Good evening, Beth Vandersteen, Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Action Committee or Advisory Committee now. We keep changing it. Just to the point regarding air travel, it did come up at the last tourism meeting, and I believe our liaison Brenda Councillor Enex was going to speak to it as well. But reliable air travel has become quite a concern within the community. You know, not speaking necessarily about any carriers in particular, but we do need to find a way to address reliable air access, both from a medical health standpoint and just general travel, as well as affordable air travel. And we have to recognize that regional airlines are at a disadvantage because of they're only able to fly into these small areas. We do have, just for information, a policy in front of the BC Chamber and the provincial level asking the province as well as the Canadian government to look at regional air carriers and deem air service to remote communities a necessary. Should not, it's an essential service, should not be considered otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Anybody else would like to address council? Well, thank you, everybody, for taking the time to come to our meeting and express your concerns with respect to that. There are a couple of letters, and if council would like to bring those letters out for conversation, they have that option a little later in the meeting during the correspondence. So thank you. We have removed 9.3 from the agenda, so adoption of the agenda as modified, moved by Councillor Enax. Do I have a second, Councillor Andrews? All in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Thank you very much. There are 3 sets of minutes. The committee of the whole from March 10th at noon, the committee of the whole from March 10th at 5, the regional council meeting March 10th for adoption, please. Moved by Councillor Enax, second by Councillor Andrews. Are there any errors or omissions? Council? Staff? No? Okay, all in favor of adoption? Are there any opposed? That passes. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to business arising from the minutes. 6.1, the Fort Nelson Events Society had a request for Rib Fest fee waivers, and I think staff have thought about this and may have some comments. Oh, Councillor Enax?
I have to call conflict as I am an employee at the Event Society.
Okay. We'll come and get you.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll speak to it just briefly here. So obviously with the last meeting, it was brought forward for councils to take a look at, and it was deferred at the time. We've discussed, because of course the fee waiver policy is fairly new. I think ink's barely dried on it, and we started discussing how the current policy works, and with the various different organizations in the community, one of the things we discussed was, is there a potential to tier that fee waiver policy based on, I guess, the type of organization that's requesting a waiver? Because obviously there's a broad spectrum of different organizations and what they're looking for, and more specifically, it's, some organizations will request a fee waiver for a single night. Could be could be for bingo or an event or some specific event, fundraiser or whatnot, and others, I don't know, to use the event society or the hand games tournament that occurred or whatnot, could be over multiple days, and from the event society perspective, honestly, it's multiple events that occur throughout the year. That's their purpose. That's one of the reasons they exist. So just what we would throw out to council, if there's interest, is if council is interested for us, staff, to bring back some alternate wording or some potential or whatnot for a tiered approach per se with that fee waiver policy, to help provide some additional guidance when councils provide it, or when organizations come forward to council to looking for waivers. So just something to think about, because it's something that we chatted internally, and I guess from a policy perspective, if a lot of times we'll make policy updates that are old, or 8, 10 years old. This one's fairly new, and if there's a struggle, for lack of better words, in trying to make a decision based on a request, and the policy doesn't necessarily look after it adequately, then we might be an opportunity to crack it open again, take a look at it. Because sometimes we try to get it right the first time, but not necessarily. It's not written in stone. So just something to consider and throw out there for council.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Councillor Roper?
Just for clarification, is this like a policy that would apply to everyone applying, or is this specific to the Fort Nelson events, Northern Rockies Tourism and Event Society?
When we chatted to staff, it wasn't specific to the event society. It was more around organizations similar to the event society. So we the policy allows 4 waivers per year, and that's typically adequate for a majority of the organizations in the community. Then you have an organization that comes forward and looks at over a weekend. And at the time of the development of the policy and through discussions with council, it was 3 weeks. You can lose 3 fee waivers in a single weekend, which if you have multiple events throughout the year, you run out of fee waivers pretty quick. So then council's faced with the discussion or decision to waive their own policy. And so it's not necessarily optimum to do that if we know there's a problem or there's a potential for it to occur. If, you know, if council's in favor, it's to look at wording that can help navigate through that. So it's not specific to that particular organization. It's there'd be criteria, I guess, that we would put together and discuss and review with council that would look at elevate you to a different tier based on the type of organization you are and the type of events that you would put off throughout the year. And miss anything, Jay?
I just, around the scale of the event or that it would, events that are economic drivers for the community, things like that. So a little more general terms, but meeting the intent of those events where there's, you know, people coming from out of the region to attend that are bringing new dollars to the community, and just trying to set those types of events apart so that they can be considered differently than the smaller scale events that happen where the 4 waivers per year probably fit the need.
Yeah, this policy is not very old. I remember the conversation, you know, well, with respect to, well, how many? You know, and I think we just plucked the number 4 out of the air with respect to, some of these groups, if they do 4 a year, that's 1 quarterly. That's a lot of work for them to, you know, carry off an event like this. And then we had the discussion, well, what if they do a couple of days in a row? Well, that, you know, it was 2, that would count for 2. And, you know, we didn't even think really, you know, far enough with respect to the Event Society and some of these others that they might do multiple multi-day events. So the idea you're putting forward with respect to a tiered approach in general terms, so that anybody could apply if they become an organization that has multiple events, multiple day events, multiple times per year. You don't have to name the name of them, but you know, if you write the policy in such a way that is general enough, then people can move up into that category if their organization are doing that type of thing. So I'm very comfortable with us opening up that policy again and letting staff come back with some wording that would help us identify what that tiered approach might look like. So, Councilor Andrews?
I'd have to agree. I'm just curious as to a potential timeline for that, because we do have a request from Ribfest in. So I would be prepared to make a motion to help out Ribfest, but I'd also like to see that the references opened up again. So if there's time to open that up and assess it prior to the event, cool. If not, I'd like to make a motion to support. So I'd like to know from Seth.
Yeah, we don't have a timeline. I'm not suggesting we'd be able to get it pulled together in enough time based on what the society's request is. But so things might have to happen concurrently potentially in terms of a council decision, but it's up to council how they want to proceed.
I just don't like the idea of going against policy that we have. I mean, can't imagine that this would take you very long to put this together. I know we're in budget. I know there's lots of things that are going on, but surely you can have this done by the next council meeting.
We already, surely. We have some ideas in terms of some wording. We just have to hash out some of the stuff with council. So we can get something, I think, in front of council in terms of the general philosophy behind it and then work on some of the finer points for sure.
Councilor Souls?
I was just thinking of how when we do open this again and you talk about a tiered approach that's equitable, I think you still have to look at, I'll use Port Nelson Event Society as an example. Some of the events that they put on have no profit generating thing within them, and they're a community service of some form that gets lots of participation but no profit. In this case, we've got a company that comes to town that sell ribs, and they weren't cheap. And they might have gone away with a bucket full of cash, and I'm wondering if are they driving the need or the expectation to have a free place to operate, or is it the Event Society? Because that's actually a distinction between 2 different types of groups, but the same society.
Something to consider, for sure. Whether it's profit generating or non-profit generating, and yeah. I'm sure our staff is up to the task.
I was just gonna mention too, maybe that it would be probably helpful to undertake some more engagement. So we've had some informal conversations around the policy since it's been adopted as we see applications coming in, but as we start to develop some of the principles in that tier, we should have some more conversations with some of the groups that are hosting the types of events that we're trying to describe so that we understand what the need is and can hopefully reflect that in the language.
How soon do you think that can happen?
I can count on one hand who the groups are, so hopefully as long as they're available to talk to.
Right. Ribfest was, remind me, date, June, July 4th, the 6th. So if you bring us something by first meeting in May, we can put that through. Is that all right with you? The CAO will determine the speed.
No,
of it.
I'm fine with that. I think it's important that council has some policy that helps them provide some guidance, so
Okay.
we'll endeavor to get that to you for sure.
Good, all right. Thank you. That brings us to petition 7.1. Community Futures is here to talk to us about the Northeast BC Rural Community Immigration Pilot Program. Moira Green, General Manager of the Community Futures Peace Yard. Welcome, Moira. I'm very happy to see you here.
Thank you.
We love having you here as well. Welcome, Bev.
Thanks.
A little empty beside me.
Oh, yes. Welcome back.
So thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be here. And are you ready over there with the, okay, good to go. All right. So I'll get you to go to the second slide. So I'm here today to speak with you about the Rural Communities Immigration Pilot Project. It is a Government of Canada project. So we'll go through a few slides, tell you a little bit about what the project is, how it works, fundraising and operations, the role of local government and the order of magnitude of the project and the ask for local government, what we are thinking of for the future. And then I'm happy to take questions, provided that it's allowed in this meeting format. So we'll go to the next slide. So the mission of the Northeast BC Rural Communities Immigration Pilot Project, which we just call RECIP, is to address labor market and recruitment challenges faced by communities and employers in Northeast British Columbia by attracting and retaining newcomers to Canada, to build community through embracing innovation, new cultural perspectives, and helping newcomers build a successful life. To strengthen the capacity of the Northeast to develop, deploy, and retain skilled workforce that can address persistent and emerging labor market needs and demographic challenges. To test a unique and innovative approach to immigration selection that emphasizes a coordinated approach between the federal government and the community. To improve the retention of immigrants in the Northeast by fostering a welcoming environment, and to encourage the distribution of new Canadians to rural and remote communities. This project is different than the one that existed in the previous 5 years. So there was a Rural Communities Immigration Project, which took place across Canada and British Columbia. It was in the South Okanagan and the East Kootenays. That project was candidate-based. This iteration of the project is employer-based. So the bulk of the work that needs to be done in the project will be done by the employer. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the project is based on a local steering committee, which is composed of economic development professionals. So we have approached all of the communities in Northeast BC, which is all of the Peace River Regional District and the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, and asked that each community assign a person or persons to sit on the steering committee. So municipalities and chambers of commerce. And the project process is, first, we identify the employers who are interested in participating in the program. Those employers need to undertake a set of training modules that come from the Government of Canada. And once those modules are completed, then we will present them with an application that allows them to apply into the process. Pardon me. Engagement. So we have already been actively engaging with employers, partially because the employers are engaging with us, even though the project isn't up and running yet. The employers are actively engaging with us. Then once the employer is in the project, they will make an irrevocable offer of full-time permanent employment, not contracts, not part-time, not seasonal, has to be full-time employment to a person who wants to apply for their permanent residency status. So one of the questions that we often get asked is, are these going to be new people who are coming into our communities? Probably not. These will probably be people who are already living and working here, who already are contributing to your community because they go to work every day, or they've been in the education system and now they've moved to the workforce. So the employer and the candidate will produce the application to Canada, which comes back to this organization, to the steering committee, and it gets vetted for completeness and for alignment with the occupation codes. So what we are required to do is we're using the national occupation codes to determine what our priorities are for each year of the project. Project is a 5-year project. So in the first year we have, and then each year we will review those occupation codes, the sectors and the subsectors in the occupation codes, to ensure that we're meeting the need that's being identified in the communities that we're trying to serve. Okay. Can we go to, yeah, thank you. So the project structure is a steering committee with 2 co-chairs, of which I'm one, and the other co-chair is from Northern Lights College. A project administrator, so happily we have an accepted employment offer on the table, and hopefully on Wednesday I will have a signature. Hooray, and we'll have somebody who can actually start to do some of this work. There will also be accounting support, some premises support, and some office support. So Northern Lights College is well positioned to allow us to have a place to go and work in almost every community in the Peace Country and in the Northern Rockies, because they have a place. So if we need a desk to sit at, we've got a place to go. So I'm hoping that council has seen the document that came with this presentation. In that document is a simple operating plan that shows how we're going to stand up the first year, and also a draft budget for the 5 years of the project. So yes, and if you would like a copy, Bev brought some. Okay, did you? Oh, did you? Thank you. So the interesting thing about this project is the Government of Canada is not funding it. So when the project hit the table, it didn't come with any money. So it is our job in each office that's hosting the project to go out and find the funding to run it. So the original application called for 4 full-time people for 5 years, which turned that project into a $400,000 or $500,000 a year project. So what we've done is we've tried to really pare that budget down by asking municipalities to assign someone in their community who can do some of the employer outreach. So part of the application process is that each employer needs a site visit. We have to go and see you and make sure that you really are who you say you are, because immigration in general is a sector in which there is a great deal of crime and a great deal of human rights abuse. So it's very important that we visit the employer on site, make sure that they actually are who they say they are, make sure that they are in good standing with the CRA and that their corporate filings are done, and to verify that the person who they say they're going to hire actually is working there. And those are the things that people can do in community, because this is your home and you know these people already. For the first year of this project, we have funding from the South Peace Mackenzie Trust and Northern Lights College for $95,000, which will allow us to hire somebody and get started. All the subsequent years are unfunded at this point. Okay, thanks. So the role of local government plays a crucial role in this, and mostly because you know and understand your businesses. You are keenly aware of the challenges that face your business community, certainly around recruitment and retention concerns. You are partnered with your local chambers of commerce and other community organizations. You have people in the community who can be available to meet with and answer the questions that prospective employers have. And your staff are currently already integral to the operation of the steering committee. Thank you. So the project is the whole of the Peace River Regional District and the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, which is about 220,000 square kilometers. So to put that in perspective, the whole of the United Kingdom is 240,000 square kilometers. The annual budget requirements are estimated at about $200,000 annually for years 2 through 5 inclusive. The 2025 allocation for recommendations is 60. So what that means is that the Government of Canada has given us 60 spots for that whole region that we can recommend for the expedited permanent residency program. That is not very many people. Vernon got 375. The East Kootenays got 250, I believe. They will review that allocation each year based on what the current immigration situation is or the current policy situation is with regard to the feds. The sector analysis is an annual process. So we choose the occupation codes. We are allowed to choose 25 occupation codes annually, and we are able to adjust those annually. Employers may be added or removed each year depending on their needs and desires. Just because you are approved to the program, if your business doesn't fit the occupation codes, you can stay. Like, we're not going to ask you to be decertified from the program, but you also don't have to stay if it's not working for you. One of the questions we've been asked is about housing and healthcare resources. It's very unlikely that housing and healthcare in our communities will be impacted because the number of recommendations is low and the demand from people who are already living in our communities is exceptionally high. So we don't see any people coming who are applying to the program who are not already here, certainly in the first couple of years. And when we get to the occupation codes that are, a specific type of engineer for a specific type of industry, well, you may need to recruit from outside Canada, but I still think it's unlikely. We are not funded, so this is important. We can terminate this project with 90 days notice. So the steering committee plans to operate for the 2025-2026 fiscal. So there's two things happening here. Community Futures and all the municipalities work on a April 1st to March 31st fiscal year. The project is calendar. So it goes from January 1st to December 31st, which is going to be a problem as time goes by, but whatever. So we're going to use the funding that we currently have available to get this thing started. So $95,000. We have sent requests for funding to Pacifican, which used to be Western Economic Diversification, for those of you who've been around for a while, Northern Development Initiative Trust, South Peace Mackenzie Trust, and the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation. The project will provide funding details and an operating plan for years 2 to 5 to all local governments in the project area by the 15th of June. So every one of those funding partners, we have asked them to commit to their level of engagement with us for years 2 to 5 by the middle of June this year, so that we can go to all our local governments and say, okay, here's the gap. Are we willing to take the leap, or are we not willing to take the leap? So if we are unable to secure funding for years 2 to 5, we will deliver notice to Canada on January 2nd of 2026, and the project will terminate on March 31st of 26. Because if we're not funded, we can't proceed.
Thank
Did
you,
I
Mara.
hit the high points?
You did.
Okay.
Questions from Moira? Thank you very much for that presentation. It was good. touched all the high points for sure.
Is it normal for programs like this not to be funded?
The previous iteration of this program also was not funded, and the stories that I got from the people who were trying to operate them was that they spent 5 years chasing the funding. I think that the fact that Canada is calling it a pilot allows them to proceed without funding it. Maybe. Hope the
You can
MP
waste a lot of your resources chasing the federal funding, right?
Yeah.
So, any other questions?
Just a comment that I think that that's a logical, the lack of funding in it, as long as you link the process to an employer, then that's its funding model. And that's a funding, I mean, the funding model, the connection to employer, that being the baseline of whether or not a person stays in the area, is really what keeps it working.
Mhm.
So I can see this being more successful than the other model.
I think the great thing about it is it gives local government a bit of a say in the whole immigration process where we've never been involved before. I do have a question about the funding here, and I know that you've put in your request to different funding partners. Have you thought at all about how you will approach the municipalities with respect to sort of principles around funding? Is it population based? Is it application based? Have you given any thought to that at all?
We haven't debated it at the steering committee, but it has been a topic of discussion on a couple of occasions. Population-based seems to be the most operationally viable option, partially because the communities that seem to be requiring the most support from this program are the smallest ones. The problem with that is that the unincorporated areas and the electoral areas don't seem to recognize that they do in fact have business operating in their areas. So this will be a challenge. It is our goal to keep to fund it without asking for municipal contribution other than the use of time and humans. But if we do need to, we'll do our level best to make sure that it's an easily understandable funding model and that is only to make up the difference. We may need you to tell us no, so that if we don't have the major funding bodies come to the table, we may need a hard no from local government so that we can say no to Canada and see what they do about it. So.
Okay, so the request really for year one is that we provide our planners and our planning department, economic development officers in our planning department to do some of the legwork
Yes.
for it. Okay, and just to be clear with respect to, because you said local steering committee, it's local to the entire program, not each community.
Yes.
Because I have had some people ask me, will we have a committee of our own? But local is to the entire operational area.
Yes, we have representation from nearly every community on the steering committee, with the notable exception of Hudson's Hope. The other thing is that, so there's the steering committee has to hive off ad hoc selection committees. We haven't written this into policy yet, but it has been discussed that the selection committee for each community will not include the representatives from that community. So for instance, the steering committee that makes the decisions for Fort Nelson, or the selection committee that makes the decision for Fort Nelson, will not have the Fort Nelson Chamber or the Fort Nelson community rep sitting on that selection. And the same with Fort St. John and Dawson Creek and Hudson's Hope and Chetwynd and Tumbler Ridge. There was a big discussion at the table about the impact of making decisions on other people's businesses and livelihoods. And so we felt it was best to make the decision with a more objective lens.
Okay. Counselor Roper?
I guess just another question about sustainability. If, if some of the local governments aren't comfortable signing the MOU, is that the end of the program, or can it shift to be inclusive of the ones that are more willing to participate and take on that risk of possibly having to consider funding in years two to 5?
That's a good question, and we have thought about that. I think that based on the way the project is shaping up, if 2 communities said no, it might kill the project. If 1 community says no and then wants in year 2, I guess we'll have to deal with that. But we also can't ask the other communities to do your work for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You say that you're getting a lot of questions, I guess, or support already from employers who want to be involved. Are you limiting the amount of employers, or is it all comers that pass?
So we are not limiting the ability to apply into the program at all. So employers, so I've been fielding since this announcement right after Christmas in the neighborhood of 40 emails and 15 calls a day about this project.
From employers or across the board?
Both, across the board. It's exhausting. Anyway, I think that based on what we have learned from the government of Canada, because we've been going through the training process on this, there's no limit to the number of employers who can be admitted to the program. The limitation will be the employer's ability to demonstrate their readiness. So they must have completed the 2 training sessions that the government of Canada is offering and be able, and that demonstration will come back to the steering committee. And then they must meet the criteria of a healthy going concern, which is your CRA payments need to be up to date and your corporate filings need to be up to date. And you can't be in an empty office with a telephone in it when we go to check. The limiting factor will be the annual choice of the occupation codes. That will be what limits people's ability to actually get candidates into the process.
Yeah, and because that matters, right?
Yeah, oh,
The more employers that you have, the more staff time we'll end up using to actually vet the employers that are applying to the program. So
So how many do we have on the list so far? 12. So this community currently has 12 employers on the list.
Right.
Can I just add that once employers apply and are approved, then that will decrease as well, right? That need, because it's not something that they're going to be
Doing annually.
doing all the time with
Right,
the same.
until you
employees.
change the codes, potentially, right?
Then there may
You
be.
still, if you're an approved employer, you can still stay in the program. You
Right,
just.
but if you add codes, you could add employers.
Yes, you
Right?
could add
So
employers.
how much influence will the municipalities have with respect to the codes or to the?
I'll let Bev answer that because we are right in the middle of the process.
We are smack dab in the middle of the process. So every community at this point, the steering committee basically sent it back to every community and said, come to us with the codes you need, whether that be 5 or 25 or 37. And then the idea was we take all of those codes and we combine them and we see where we match. Because that's kind of your first step. If we all agree, if everybody needs a cook, then it's easy to agree that that's the code. And as Maura just said, we're smack dab in the middle of that process right now. So we've gone through the first vetting of codes. Everybody's kind of narrowed things down and sent it back in. And now we'll go through that next, whether or not we have to get into a bit of a fighting match, to protect the employers and the codes in our own communities. But I think we're going to see it's fairly similar across the region.
Yeah, I mean, there's some obvious industries, I guess, and employer groups that make sense for this, but I've been approached by a couple of people, more than a couple of people. But one fellow is from banking, very interested. another is from the education. And I don't know that they would necessarily fit the codes that we're all thinking about. But so I'm just wondering, how do people like that, or employers like that, because it's got to be the employers first. How are they able to get their interest, I guess?
So yes, talk to your employers. Let's put them on the list. We will reach out to all of them. But I offered this. The first year started on January 1st. We're already, for all intents and purposes, the 1st of April. By the time we get the employers sorted out and the application process started, we are going to be hard pressed to use the 20 or the 60 recommendations that we have for 2025. And we get a new batch of recommendations in 2026. So what we're thinking at the steering committee level is we need to hit the low hanging fruit first, because we need this to happen quickly. It's not a quick process. If we don't use our allocation, it gets taken away and given to another jurisdiction that can use it. If we use it all, we can ask for additional allocation from other jurisdictions that have excess. But this year specifically, we're feeling like we need to choose the employers and the occupation codes where they're ready and move it forward. And then, so for instance, when you think about education or healthcare, those two sectors of our communities move at a glacial pace, and probably next spring would be the best time to talk about those occupation codes. No offense, but right, they are not going to be as quick as some other industries will be.
I had something else and it went right out of my mind with that answer. So, does anybody else have any questions? Oh, I know what it was. Does Canada give you the opportunity to let them know how many applications that you have so that they understand what the need is in subsequent years with respect to how many applications you're able to put through? I mean, they had to get to 257 in Vernon somehow. Right?
Yes. I have no idea how they allocated these recommendations. And I'm thinking that the people that are working with us on the project are also maybe not on the inside of that formula, but we are leaning on them as hard as we can.
Great.
So.
Because we're not without our own contacts to, you know, to
Yes.
make some calls and lobby and do what we can. You know, I wanted to go right away, but to your advice, you know, let's just get our 60 and worry about getting more as we get those 60, you know, in. But
And I think if we can demonstrate funding for for years 2 through 5, then yeah, absolutely, let's lobby. But right now, we don't have a project because we can't fund it. So.
Right. Okay. Anybody else? Maura, thank you very much for your time. Bev
It
as
was
well.
my pleasure, Your Worship.
Yep. I think we all would, I don't think we'll make a decision tonight. I think, you know, we have another meeting April, remind me, 14th, something like that. So hopefully we can have a close look at the MOU and the numbers, and staff can give a report with respect to how much time they thinks it takes. And then I think by then we should be able to give you an answer.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Okay. That brings us to correspondence because there are no staff reports tonight. So I know that there are at least 2 on here that we would like pulled out. So I'll ask if there's any interest for pulling out any of these. Would somebody like to make a motion to pull out either of these letters or any of these letters for discussion rather than for information? Councilor Andrews?
I'd like to make a motion to pull letter 8.5 and 8.6 to add to the discussion from our previous residents that showed up today.
I'll second that.
Moved by Counselor Andrews, second by Counselor Roper. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, those letters 8 and 5, the letter from, I don't know how to pronounce the doctor's last name. I've never been to her. Does anybody know how to pronounce? Okay, Dr. Vicky's letter. I'm good with that. And the letter from Gail Hannaback about Central Mountain Air. So those are pulled and they're open for discussion. Council? Councilor Andrews?
Well, aside from the people who spoke today and these letters, I've been contacted by many people in the community. So I think this definitely something we need to reach out and get some communications between us and Central Mountain Air and see if there's anything we can do or they can do, or at least get some more scheduled flights and no cancellations.
That's easy to say.
Well, you got to start the conversation somewhere.
Councilor Roper?
Yeah, and we heard the comment tonight from the gallery that, we're putting tax dollars towards this airport. $1.7 million per year operating. And we've got a very limited flight schedule as it is, and with deviations in that, we're looking at something that is just not meeting the needs of the community. So, I would like to engage with CMA and try to understand the challenges that they're going through. Maybe there's something we can help with, or maybe it's something that is just might be a lost cause just with the economy and how things go. So I would like to understand more about the why. And however we have to do that, I'm willing to reach out.
Councilor next.
I agree with both Councillor Andrews and Councillor Roper. It's a great inconvenience to all the residents that travel out for medical. And as for Mr. Dolan, I understand his frustration. Not everybody can afford the financial burden when you get stuck in Vancouver or Prince George that, that could devastate, a family that's already struggling. So it's worth asking about for sure.
Councilor Slows, comments?
Yeah, just, I recall when Fort Nelson had the second largest number of Class C airports in Canada in 2012, and it was a very busy place. And we had, in previous councils, we had a number of visits. I recall 2 specific ones with the original founder of Central Mountain Air. And now I understand since that it has changed hands and so on, but to get a hold of them and to sit down and talk or invite them here so that we could meet to discuss this. It's one thing to, just one thing that is really obvious when you go onto their sites and look on their website for signing up. They don't talk about their lack of service. They talk about signing up and here's where we fly and fly with us. So I think it's quite reasonable given the context when you have businesses in your community that are threatening to leave by virtue of lack of travel, and you have others like Bill who've been left hanging on the other end. Well, I like this. That's really lame. Like, it's really lame when there's no discussion about what's driving it. So let's get to the bottom of it. Let's contact them.
So I certainly agree that the reliability issues are causing grief in our community. And I have no problem with us engaging with them. My question to staff and perhaps some of the councillors who have been here longer than I have we ever talked to, I know we had the majors here at one time, but have we ever talked to some of the smaller regional carriers to see Coastal Pacific or any of those to see if they were interested? And let me just say, the reason I say that is that Central Mountain Air is here. We want to talk to them. We want to be tactful about it. But in the event that they get upset and they pull the pin and we don't have anybody else, we lose our funding, our ACAP funding for the airport, right? There has to be a scheduled flight into this airport in order for there to be ACAP funding or BCAP funding. So it's an extremely tactful approach that we need to make. But I'm wondering if if there's potential for us to explore a backup, and have we in the past?
We've had limited discussions in the past. It's a small industry, so industry partners are aware of each other's activities and don't want to really step on toes either. So like the Pacific Coastal, a number of years ago, we've had discussions. And again, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head, Mayor. We have to be tactful, we have to be cautious around our approach. We've, as staff, have discussed this recently and have reached out, and it's the ACTAV department's been in some discussions, including our airport manager. But again, it's, we don't have any direct control over the situation. We have concerns, of course. We see it. We deal with it from an operational perspective when we know the flight's not coming in. But again, we just have to be cognizant of the fact, like you said, that our ACAP funding is dependent on having sched flights in here. And it's, we're talking millions of dollars, $17 million runway upgrade a couple of years ago. So not that it's going to prevent us from having the conversation, but we have to ensure we have the appropriate conversations too, so that we don't drive anyone away.
So I like Councilor Roper's idea of, is there an opportunity for us to assist you, in any way? There may or there may not be, but if we approach it from that perspective and from the, instead of going in there stomping our feet, I think if we approach it from, is there anything we can do to help? Asking questions about why it is the way it is, that might get us a little further along than trying to stomp our feet.
Asking
on
questions,
somebody.
understand.
Yeah,
Some
try to
stuff we can be part of
understand
a solution.
what's got them in the pickle that they are, and and see if there's any help that we can offer, or public engagement, something to it's that spiral down. The less reliable are, the less people they have on, the less money they make, the less reliable they are, and down you go, down further. So I'll accept a motion that we engage with the air carriers to determine the issues with respect to reliability and any other carriers that might potentially want to come in here.
Was that a motion? Do you need a
No,
first or a second?
I'm looking for one of you to make that motion.
I liked your motion there. I'd like to make that as a motion that we contact Central Mountain Air and any other potential carriers and try to find out if there's any synergies or issues we can help CMA with, as well as investigating other carriers.
I'll second that.
So I'll ask the corporate manager if she's got that.
No, but that's why we have a recording, because I wrote what you moved, and then Councillor Andrews made his own, so it's fine, we will.
You got the
As
gist of
long
it?
as everyone at the table understands what the
Okay.
motion is, I can catch up.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Enox. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Thank you. That passes. So we will engage with Central Mountain Air and any other regional carrier to look at reliability of the air service in Fort Nelson. Good. Okay, then any other correspondence that's there for information anybody would like to raise? Councilor Roper.
I would propose that we pull 8.7 and 8.8 for discussion, if there's support for that.
Okay, I don't have an 8.8 on mine. You must have a updated agenda. So yeah, yours is digital. Okay. 8.7, 8.8. So 8.7 is a letter from Dave Andrews. Support for continued funding the Fort Nelson Public Library. Can you read what 8.8 is about?
Yeah, 8.8 letter from Danica Andrews regarding support for continued funding of community nonprofit organizations.
Okay. So moved by Councilor Roper. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Andrews, that we raise those two pieces of correspondence for discussion. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Okay, those are open for discussion. Councilor Roper?
Thank you. I feel in this situation, perhaps we inadvertently put the cart in front of the horse. Usually we're going to the community, to whatever groups we're making decisions that impact them, and we're gathering feedback and then making our decision from there. Here we have a decision that was brought forth on the March 13th meeting. And that was when it was brought up. And typically we have an unofficial policy, first heard, deferred. But we did go ahead and make a decision. And I feel as important as the decisions that we make, equally as important is the process that we use to get to those decisions, to make sure that they're as informed as possible. And I feel like we missed the mark on this particular decision. And the outcome of that vote might be the right decision for the community. There might be support for that, and there might be a way forward with that decision. But regardless of that, I believe that the process that we used was flawed. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think everyone at the table quite understood the ramifications of that decision. And there might have been some remorse, or some voters' remorse at the end of that. So I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, these 2 letters of correspondence. I saw another one come in today on our email, and I do know that the other nonprofits I've engaged with, at least one more, and they'll have some information coming to us. So the typical process for these budget deliberations would be to go to the public, gather feedback, and then make a final decision, whatever that might be. And the decision we made was to freeze the funding of the nonprofit and community groups at last year's levels. And I think that decision needs to be done at the final budget meetings. Once we've gone to the public and gathered that information, that's the point where that decision gets made. I feel personally, and that's what we've done. This is my 2nd term in council, and that was the first time I've seen a process kind of deviate in that way. And I just want to make sure that we're making the best decisions. So that's my 2 cents, and I think we'll hear some more. But I mean, I believe we should have gotten this feedback before we made that decision.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments with respect to that?
I respect everything you said, Councillor Roper. I knew what we were voting for at the time. I first heard, deferred. I agree. Part of it's our preliminary budget. It's what we're presenting to the community. We still get a chance to vote on it, whereas I wasn't in the way that I voted, and maybe we can come up with some information and we can have a different council vote with more fulsome information and discussion on it at that time. This is what we're presenting. I think we can continue with the presentation, and yeah, we're going to see a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but we will see more feedback on the decision we had, I'm sure.
Sure.
Just a follow up. We're down 1 counselor right now. We have a council member on a mandatory leave of absence, which makes decision making a little bit more challenging. And I think if that vote that we did have was 2-4, and if that vote had been a 3-3, which it very well could have been, that motion wouldn't have passed, because if you don't have the majority of decision makers on that vote, then it doesn't pass. And I do know that, I don't think we were all understanding of exactly what it meant. And I think maybe some of us would appreciate the opportunity to revisit that. So yeah, I just feel like we're putting that cart in front of the horse. And we really should, make that decision, when we have all the feedback, and we're still gathering that feedback now. So I'm welcome to more comments on that.
I'm certainly open to the comments. That's why we do a preliminary budget process. And that's what this was. It's a preliminary budget process. We haven't deviated from the process that councils have used for any of the councils I've been on. You have a preliminary budget process. Decisions are made by councils, by majority, and then that gets put to the public. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow the process. To change that and go to the public before you have a preliminary budget, you've really got nothing to engage with. Now we have something to engage with, and we're starting to see some public input. This is exactly what we're looking for. So we've got a process that will lead us through to the last week in April. I think staff are starting to put together engagement opportunities, dates as we speak. They're looking at different opportunities, the open house that we have every year. Perhaps if there's a lot of community input, we'll see much more activity at that public meeting than we've ever seen before. I think I can count mostly on one hand, for sure on two, and the three that I've been involved with here, how many people have come to those. So maybe some more people will come, but we are following the process as it's laid out: preliminary budget, public process, final budget meeting, which I think we're probably looking at the end of April for the final budget discussion, where we can have all of the public input that's been given to us. We can weigh our minds on that. We can then determine how to move forward with respect to that, and we'll vote accordingly. And then there's another process, public process, which is the budget bylaw process, which is the public process as well. So there's lots of opportunity for people to engage, and I think we're on the right path, or we're on a path. I can't say it's right because we're in disagreement. We're on a path, and I think that path can go through the process that it's in, and there's lots of opportunity for you and others to engage as we move forward. So that's my thought on that. Councillor Schultz.
I too want to express appreciation for these letters and for other feedback for that very same reason, the fact that we have a preliminary process. But just one thing that I considered as part of the framework of the discussion when we were voting on it the last time around, with our government grants policy that we've been working on for an extended period of time, several comments have been made through at council meetings and so on regarding the level of need in the community from nonprofits that are at this point not receiving funding. And there is going to be the statement that there's going to be an increased number of them, quite likely, that once the policy is in place and has tangible rules, then we'll see a uptick on the requests for help. And so like we did have one delegation, the Snowmobile Club met with us and they were asking for funding, and apparently there are quite a number of others. And so what I would like to just get on record is that this is an invitation to all of those groups to put in feedback on the funding to the groups. This is a real invitation. It's time to get public feedback. So I sure invite the other groups that are looking for funding to show up at the open house, because let's get this discussion going on a broader scale.
Yeah, and starts to give us a bit of an order of magnitude what it might look like and whether or not it's sustainable for the long term. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so there are three pieces of correspondence left for information, unless anybody would like to pull any of those out. I'll accept a motion for 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4 to be received for information. Moved by Councillor Souls.
Yep.
Second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? Vote carries. Thank you. That takes us down to a new business item. There is an email poll for ratification for the Northern Rockies Arts Council request for a letter of support. Councillor Andrews?
I would move to ratify that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality support the grant application for the Northern Rockies Art Council to the Northern Development Initiative Trust for up to the maximum grant of $20,000 and a 50-50 grant for the Celebrating Local Arts and Culture.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Enox. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of ratification? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 9.3, we took that off. We come to 10.1, councillor reports. Are there any council reports? Councillor Enox, please.
So March 17th, Mayor Fraser and myself attended the Fort Nelson Library Board meeting. On the 19th of March, I attended the Northeast Destination Development Advisory Committee meeting. On that same day, we had our first in a long time, actually, Tourism Advisory Committee since the revamp. Central Mountain was the big talk, and we've all discussed it tonight, and Bev did my work for me, so thank you. March 22nd, we attended the 4th annual Andy Bailey Ice Fishing Derby with the Event Society. Just a quick shout out to Radar Road, the NRM, rec staff, and the Canadian Rangers. The roads and everything were great, sanded. Everybody had a beautiful time out there, and we couldn't ask for better weather. 45 fishermen were registered. We had probably 60 people attend. Two of the fellows that joined from Fort St. John last year brought actually 2 buddies, so there was 4 from Fort St. John that come
Nice.
out for it. And then as well on the weekend, Streeper Kennels was in Tok, Alaska. Lena Streeper won the Tok Race of Champions, becoming only the 2nd woman in 69 years to win that race. So good job, Lena. That's number 26 on their belt of championships. Yeah, it was a good weekend all around.
Good, good, thank you. Is there anybody else before I do mine? Okay, so I also attended that library board meeting to discuss the budget. March the 11th, there was a mayor's meeting with Minister Kellon, Municipal Affairs, where we talked about, and Minister of State Anderson, where we talked about the response to the tariffs that the provincial government is interested in. I essentially had one question there that allowed me less than a minute really to talk about concerns about reducing traffic, commercial traffic along the Alaska Highway. Asked the minister talked about our letter that we'd sent. The minister said that he'd received our letters and that he would respond. So that was March 11th, and there's been no response from them since. March the 13th, I attended a Healthy Communities meeting here, part of Northern Health. Aaron Powers put on that presentation where they updated us with respect to Northern Community Services. We talked to them a little bit about the Villers Air transportation proposal and the fact that child development assessments are not being done in this community, and it's impacting many of our children and families in the community. And we're looking to talk to them a little bit more about that moving forward. March the 13th was our Community Fire Smart Committee. And I regret to tell you that I was the one who didn't get the minutes of that out to you, but we got them out to you. I was remiss. Yeah, you guys got them today, so I remembered today, and so they sent them those. But the highlights basically is that the survey is complete and started. I understand there's at least 50 responses already to that. So hopefully we'll get a bit of an update from Kayla on that on this Thursday's BC Hydro, the executive vice president in charge of planning, and the director for transmission asset planning, Maureen Daschuk and Mike Gite, gave a presentation to the committee with respect to what they're doing around the province in trying to reduce fuel loads along their lines, vegetation control. We talked about local contracts, local subcontracts, the structure of their contracts, because the structure of their contracts are so large, it's very difficult for contractors, small contractors to be able to bid on those projects because they're so big. So we talked about, and they just let a 5-year contract out. So we've got some time to sit with them and try to figure out what that might look like next time, so that if the scope of the contract is smaller, then maybe some of our local contractors can bid. There is a very good opportunity for them to subcontract, though, to some of these bigger outfits that have got these contracts. We talked about, I quizzed them on a local coordinator, so that when they do come and have work, we all know that there was complaints with respect to the quality of the work that they did while they were here doing brushing. They really weren't clearing right-of-ways. They were brushing. And there was some complaints with respect to that. And they wouldn't commit to hiring a local coordinator, but they did commit to working with the municipality with respect to ongoing operations and having, probably somebody from us, probably Terry, interacting with them as they're doing this work, so that any complaints that we get, we can get to them fairly quickly. And he'll have whoever their coordinator is, because they do have a coordinator, they're just not necessarily in the community where the work is being done at the time. But there'll be that contact so that we can try to get concerns to that coordinator as quickly as possible. The Ministry of Forests has completed, their contractor has completed their wildfire planning report, and we're hoping to see them present the final draft of that. Essentially, that is a risk assessment that identifies around a particular community where the Ministry of Forests sees the biggest risk, and then they try to put some mitigation plans in place. And so we're looking forward to some sort of a presentation of that report to us at one of the next few Wildfire Resiliency Committee. We talked about the terms of reference update that we had passed the last time. March 18th, I sat with the Fort Nelson Local Health Planning Table, the Primary Care Network, to review the local service plan. It is almost complete. A new representative from the Fort Nelson First Nation who was not up to speed yet with respect to that plan. So the Fort Nelson First Nation would like to review that plan with the First Nations Health Authority to bring them up to speed with respect to their expectations, the expectations of the Fort Nelson First Nation of what this whole plan should encompass. And hopefully they'll be comfortable with what they saw and they'll come forward. Our next meeting is April the 8th. So hopefully if they've got some changes, they'll bring those changes forward. This whole plan needs to be presented to the Ministry of Health, at which time then Ministry of Health, if they agree with that plan, then there's potential increase in resources with respect to the medical services in our community. So we'll see where that goes. It's not public yet because it's still only just in a draft form until it's presented to the, to the Ministry of Health. March the 21st, I sat with the NDIT Regional Advisory Committee where we reviewed the 2025 first intake for recommendations. It's the first time that we've been oversubscribed at NDIT in the Northeast region for projects. So it was not a difficult discussion, but a good discussion. I mean, you've got to pick projects that NDIT, looks at what NDIT was originally intended for. And so you're looking at, programs that, that have economic development opportunities, the jobs, return on investment, leveraging of investment. We've never had to worry about looking at all of those details before because we've always had enough money in the Northeast RAC to be able to fund all the projects that have come through. So that was a very good and interesting discussion, tough discussion, because you really had to take your hat off from the community that you're representing and put your NDIT governance hat on and really look at those. So yeah, so it was a good discussion. Hopefully it doesn't happen a lot, but that's the first time. It likely will increase. I guess last, with respect to the letter that we sent to the Premier and the news press release that we sent out, I've had two radio interviews, one with CBC Radio West, Sarah Penton out of Kelowna, and the other one this morning with CKNW, which is a global station with Simi Sarah, Simi in the mornings, I think, or mornings with Simi. Good discussions. Both of them went 8-9 minutes long. So I think we got some, I was able to get some good points in with respect to the local impacts, the community impacts that we're going to see if we see tolls on commercial trucks on the Alaska Highway, both short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And really, I think the longest term is this negative sort of tone that gets set up. And it's not just for the truck drivers. If the truck drivers keep these jobs going in the wintertime, right? So that they're here in the summertime when the tourist traffic goes through here in droves. And, she said, what do you want the public to know? And I said, I want them to know that this negative expectation that's being set by this is being seen by American tourists. And if they don't, just about every American has this idea that on their bucket list, they want to go to Alaska sometime in their life. And, if they don't feel welcome, they're just not going to come. And pretty soon that bucket list idea will be gone. And that's the long-term negative potential that this has. And so, yeah, I think we got that point across well, and we'll see if anybody else picks up the communication.
The negative to the against the Americans, we're seeing that with the Event Society on a lot of the US travel pages. And there's actually US citizens asking, I'm planning on going to Alaska. Are the Canadians going to hate me?
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen that, a handful of times already.
Yeah. So that's the potential long term, right? I mean, I explained that we have three basic industries that we're the service center for: the forest industry, the petroleum and natural gas industry, and the service center to the Alaska Highway. And, provincial policy hasn't been very friendly to the Northern Rockies. Right? It's contributed to, it's not the sole reason, but it's contributed to the demise of the petroleum industry and the forest industry here because they just refuse to invest in that railroad. And so there's 2 out of the 3 gone. The last one you got is really that highway that's putting new dollars into our economy. I mean, our economy does okay. The dollars revolve around, but sooner or later, somebody spends $1 out of here on Amazon this or Amazon that. That's $1 gone. It's gone from the community. Unless you're replacing those dollars with new dollars from somewhere else, your economy just continually shrinks on itself to the point that businesses start, and we see businesses closing, right? Wapiti Sports closed this year, right? We slowly, one by one, away they go. So, people think, oh, this is just tolls on trucks that, damn the American. But it has a local impact. And the more we can get that out there, I think the better off we are. So that's my report for the things that I did in the last couple of weeks. There's no outstanding, any other reports? There's no outstanding business? Any notice of motions? Seeing none, are there any public who wish to ask questions online? Gallery? Seeing none, adjournment is in order. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Enoch. All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.